Hi guys, welcome to chapter 21, a new chapter. We're focusing on the immune system for chapter 21. Okay, so let's begin. Yes, this is a picture of COVID-19. It's going to be impossible to talk about the immune system without referring a lot to COVID-19. The reason I'm filming this is because we're all stuck at home for this global pandemic. So let's learn about our immune system and what it does to keep us safe, okay? First, an infectious disease is any disease that can pass from one organism to another, and that might be animal to person, animal to animal, bacteria to animal, person to person, any organism to another organism. We more commonly refer to an infectious disease as something that is contagious, okay? Pathogens are what causes the disease, okay? We call them germs. There are different types of pathogens we'll talk about in a minute, but that's the actual disease-causing agent, okay? Got some history here. So this guy named Louis Pasteur, back in the 1860s, he first kind of came up with this notion that microorganisms, okay, bacteria, caused foods to spoil. Milk to get sour and meat to go rancid and things like that. And so he started kind of experimenting with these microorganisms. He actually came up with this process known as pasteurization. Food is still pasteurized today, and basically it's heated up to kill those microorganisms, and then the food lasts longer, okay? Well, shortly after that time, a little later in the 1860s, this guy named Joseph Lister, he came up with the idea that those microorganisms also cause diseases. Before that time, people thought that diseases were caused by evil spirits and people not praying enough and things like that. They had no idea that they're spread by these invisible germs. So much so that when people would have surgery, they wouldn't even clean the instruments. They had no idea that they were causing infection in people by transferring microorganisms from one person to the next. So he actually came up with the idea of washing surgical instruments. Can you believe that somebody had to come up with that idea? And the survival rate jumped through the roof. It was people, many more people survived surgery simply because he started washing the instruments. So he's credited with this idea of antiseptics, things that kill germs, and that's why Listerine is called Listerine, because it's an antiseptic mouthwash. Fun facts. All right, so let's talk about the different kinds of pathogens that we have. Okay? Bacteria and viruses are the obvious ones, and we've talked about those in a previous chapter. But just a little review there. Bacteria are those single-celled organisms. And then viruses aren't really considered an organism. They're not considered a living thing, but they're absolutely one of the pathogens. In this picture right here, it shows you viruses attacking a bacteria. So this big red thing, this is a bacteria, and then the viruses are on there. And if you remember, a virus is nothing more than a container holding DNA, and then that DNA gets injected into the host cell, whether it's a bacteria or cells of your respiratory system or wherever it is, and it hijacks that cell, and it starts producing its own DNA and its own parts to produce more viruses, okay? So those are the most common ones. Bacteria and viruses cause the majority of infectious diseases. When we talk about germs, we're typically talking about those two things. But there's also fungus and protists to worry about. The disease, athlete's foot, is actually caused by yeast, which is part of the fungi family. And then malaria, which is spread by mosquitoes, is actually caused by a protist, okay? So those are a little less common, but those are our four main types of pathogens that cause the disease, okay? How are they spread? All right, well, this is huge in the news right now, and we're not supposed to be shaking hands. We're not even supposed to be standing closer than 6 feet with people that aren't in our own family, because many diseases are commonly spread by person-to-person contact, okay? Now, within that person-to-person contact, there's actually two different types of contact. One is direct contact. That's kissing, shaking a hand, and actually picking up a pathogen and then getting it into your own eye or mouth or something. But it's that direct contact, okay? The other person-to-person contact is called airborne contact, and that's when you just sneeze out in the air or cough out in the air. Those little droplets that leave your body can contain the pathogen. And if you sneeze on somebody or cough on somebody or sneeze or cough on something else, that's going to be a different method of transmission, but that pathogen can spread that way. Okay, so person to person is the main one, and that is how this COVID-19 is being spread, is person to person or through contaminated objects. And these are somewhat related. If I sneeze on my hand and I shake somebody's hand, that's person to person contact. But if I sneeze on my hand and then I use a doorknob and somebody else comes and uses that same doorknob, that's now spread by considered a contaminated object. Okay, so food and water can become contaminated and cause problems, but objects that are touched by people that are infected can also carry that pathogen for a while. So that's part of why we're being so careful right now. You know, disinfectant wipes, Clorox wipes, hand sanitizer, those kind of things are being used a lot in case objects have been contaminated by somebody that has COVID touching it or sneezing on it. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Okay. Diseases can also be spread from animal bites. Mosquitoes, bats, squirrels. Rabies would be considered an infectious disease that's spread by animal bites. Malaria that I talked about earlier. So if an animal is infected with certain diseases and then bites another animal or a person, that animal or person can get the disease. And then finally, there's some pathogens that are just out in the environment. The reason you get a Tdap, the T for the Tdap is tetanus. Tetanus can be found, it's a bacteria that can be found in the soil. Dirty, rusty things can contain it, and so that's why you get a tetanus shot if you cut yourself outside, whatever. There's other types of food poisoning, botulism, that can be found in the environment. Okay, not as common as the first two methods, the person to person and the contaminated object. Okay, the contaminated object examples of that are also like sharing food, sharing drinks. Okay, so just be aware. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about this COVID-19. Unfortunately, not everything is known about it. Okay, it is known that it can be transmitted through the air by coughing and sneezing, but you have to be pretty close to a person. Like they pretty much have to sneeze on you. It's not like if I'm in the classroom and somebody's on the far end of the classroom and they sneeze, doesn't mean I'm going to get it. Okay, those droplets would have to like hit me. Okay, but that's why they're encouraging people to wear masks right now. It's not so much, if I'm wearing a mask, it's not so much to protect me from somebody else. It's to protect everyone else from me. It's to keep those droplets in my body because I might have it and not have any symptoms, okay? Close contact, this would be that person-to-person contact, touching, hugging. If they have it, it can be transmitted that way. And then touching objects. And so that's why you're asked to stay in your house as much as possible right now. Only go to the grocery store maybe once a week and just make sure you're washing your hands afterwards, okay? I hope you guys aren't too scared about it. Be safe. We're going to beat it. But it is kind of timely that it fits in with this chapter right now, okay? Next section, we will talk about what our body does to help protect us from things, including things like COVID-19. This is, you know, just how it's transmitted. Next section, I'm going to tell you how to stay safe, okay? All right. See you guys later.